Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight, coming to you live from Warsaw. The German pre-election turmoil continues. From soap cakes to anti-right demonstrations, the tensions are running high. A set of chancellor nominations has been announced by the Christian Democrats, Social Democrats, and the Alternative for Germany. More on that in our report by Zuzanna Jurek and in an interview where I will be joined by Daniela Schwarzer. But before we dive in, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. To what extent will Russia and Belarus try to influence the upcoming Polish presidential elections? Polish authorities presented a report and the findings are cause for concern. Poland and Ukraine exchange a list of burial sites in a crucial step towards historic reconciliation. Turkish soldiers help restore a bridge in a flood-stricken area of southern Poland. Russia is waging a cognitive war in Poland, which is expected to intensify in the coming weeks. That's the main conclusion of the first report by a government committee investigating Russian and Belarusian influence in the country. The committee has explained in detail how the Kremlin is looking to destabilize Poland and the EU. Kazimierz Łysiak reports.
According to the extensive report found on the Polish government's website, Russia and Belarus now have their eyes set on Poland as the country prepares for the presidential election in May. The committee investigating Russian and Belarusian influence in Poland said on Friday that the threat of Russian disinformation is very real.
We must take into account that in the last days and even in the last hours before the election, dramatic fake news will appear on the internet. Their aim will be to influence the voting process.
The committee, led by the head of the Polish military counterintelligence, pointed to four main false narratives spread by Moscow and Minsk in the Polish media space. These are as follows: NATO and the EU are oppressive, hostile and colonize their members. Western civilization is collapsing, decadent and demoralized. In the war in Ukraine, Russia is winning and must win. While Ukraine is a bankrupt state and Ukrainians are not a nation, no one can beat Russia, a nuclear power. And promoting any conspiracy theories that undermine the public trust, like anti-vaccination narratives, 5G, etc. According to the committee, the Kremlin knows it won't be able to easily promote its propaganda in Poland. That is why it will rather focus on spreading partially manipulated messages, trying to undermine the West's credibility and sow information chaos where possible. TVP World is tackling Russian disinformation with its Break the Fake program, pointing out examples of false narratives spread by Russian trolls. You can watch it Monday to Friday at 7:15 p.m. Central European Time.
The turmoil that has surrounded Germany's snap elections from the start of the campaign is set to continue. As the AfD begins its two-day conference, thousands gather in Riesa to protest against the party. Meanwhile, in Berlin, the Christian Democrats and Social Democrats confirmed the nominations of Friedrich Merz and Olaf Scholz as chancellor hopefuls. Zuzanna Jurek reports.
The emergence of the populist Alternative für Deutschland to the forefront of the race for the Bundestag met with public opposition. Upwards of 100,000 people took to the streets of Riesa during the party's summit this weekend. Elsewhere in the country's capital, Friedrich Merz of the Christian Democrats and incumbent Chancellor Olaf Scholz were confirmed as representatives who will face off against the AfD's Alice Weidel for the country's top office. Her name has been on everyone's lips, not least due to the resonance of her views with high-profile yet unelected public figures, including Elon Musk. On Thursday, the two held a long-awaited, if controversial, debate on social media platform X.
To label Adolf Hitler as right and conservative. He was exactly the opposite.
I'm really strongly recommending that people vote for AfD.
Musk's growing involvement in German electoral processes was previously criticized by the German chancellor.
The decisive factor is that Mr. Musk has supported a party that is partly right-wing extremist. And as we can see, he's not only doing this in our country.
With experts being less coy about his overt attempts to influence the German election results.
I think Elon Musk helps right-wing extremism within Europe to weaken Europe.
In the aftermath of the meeting, the German government reportedly began talking about removing its presence from X due to, quote, concerns over its algorithm. And for some experts, the AfD's growing publicity has already had a decisive impact on German politics.
I want to highlight that AfD already has some success in this regard, that they are moving the so-called Overton window more to the right. And you can see that the mentioned Christian Democrats and Friedrich Merz.
We will not be able to solve the problems in Germany if we do not strictly limit the number of migrants coming to Germany. Illegal migration must be stopped.
With the elections fast approaching, Christian Lindner, the leader of the Free Democratic Party, who was slapped with a foam cake not once, but twice this week, may not be the only one to be hit by the increasingly antagonistic climate of the race for the Bundestag.
The United States, under outgoing President Joe Biden, targeted Russia's largest revenue resources and imposed considerable sanctions on the Kremlin's energy sector. Given the change in the U.S. administration, the longevity of the sanctions is in question, but they could prove a useful negotiating tool for President-elect Donald Trump.
The new U.S. sanctions against the Kremlin hit numerous targets, including Russia's largest oil companies, such as Gazprom Neft. The sanctions also target almost 200 vessels, a significant number of which are allegedly a part of Russia's shadow fleet, aging vessels transporting oil in dubious ways.
The sanctions are imposed today because they will have profound effect on the growth of the Russian economy and make it more difficult for Putin to conduct his wars.
These sanctions certainly target both Russian oil and LNG, and we expect our actions to cost Russia upwards to billions of dollars per month.
According to a Biden official, whether U.S. President-elect Donald Trump will keep the sanctions in place once he takes office on January 20th is up to Trump, but they could offer him valuable leverage.
But these sanctions do give Trump an additional tool to use when negotiating with Putin. It's something that he can take away, right? So, okay, so Vladimir, if you're not going to play ball, I'm going to keep these sanctions. If you're going to be nice with Ukraine, if you're going to stop the war, we'll take these sanctions off.
Amid evolving security concerns in Europe, the allocation of EU funds for armaments sourced from outside the bloc has been paused until the February 3rd summit. There, EU leaders will address defense funding in the context of Trump's presidency. The discussions will shape the future of the European defense industry program.
Amid concerns that Chinese ships may be disrupting global undersea cables, an analysis of Chinese patent applications suggests a deliberate intent to do so. Our reporter Sonia Gatabishchan spoke to Newsweek's Didi Kirsten Tatlow, who published the patent review.
Chinese ships have been suspected of damaging key undersea communication cables in the Baltic Sea off Norway and around Taiwan, raising concerns of potential sabotage. An investigation into Chinese patent applications revealed devices designed to cut undersea cables quickly and inexpensively. In an exclusive interview for TVP World, the Newsweek investigator shared her findings.
The existence of these patents and these cutting anchors, as they're called, doesn't indicate that China did these acts, but it does indicate the aim or the ability to carry out acts of that nature.
The patent applicants claimed that the devices were intended to destroy illegal cables near China. However, experts suggest that the designs offer dual-use applications for both civilian and military purposes. Tatlow further emphasized that the patents never received patent status, and the applications were either withdrawn or rejected.
We can't rule out that there was some interest that intervened and said, this is a really useful technology. Let's not go too public with it. As Chinese leader Xi Jinping says, science is universal, but scientists have a motherland. And in China, scientists are all expected to serve the Communist Party.
With mounting suspicions of Russian sabotage operations targeting undersea cables in the Baltic Sea through its shadow fleet, the increasingly close ties between Russia and China present a growing concern.
The China-Russia relationship adheres to the strategic guidance of the heads of state of the two countries and has become increasingly mature and stable.
The undersea cables are vital for communications and power transmission. In a recent address, Poland's top defense advisor Jacek Siewiera emphasized that NATO members must intensify their efforts to safeguard Baltic energy infrastructure, especially undersea infrastructure.
Belgrade has cancelled several contracts for Russian weapons, Serbia's chief of general staff of the armed forces has said. The country has been heavily dependent on Russian military deliveries, but Western sanctions have made it impossible for Moscow to comply with the contracts signed with Belgrade. Is Serbia moving further away from Russia? Marek Steele has the story.
Serbia. Despite being a European Union candidate state, for years the country has been Moscow's staunchest ally in Europe.
The loss of Kosovo as a part of Serbia created an inseparable bond between the Serbian dream to regain control over these territories and the opportunity for Russia to become Serbia's main advocate.
But ties between Belgrade and Moscow now seem to be loosening. Russia is not fulfilling military contracts that it had signed with Belgrade.
When it comes to the delivery of weapons from the Russian Federation, it is practically impossible at the moment. We terminated some contracts and postponed some in the hope that the situation in international relations at the global level will normalize.
Last year, instead of buying a new batch of Russian fighter jets, Belgrade decided to purchase French Rafale jets for nearly €3 billion to replace its fleet of Russian MiG-29s.
The Serbian government is aware that keeping this Russian course in the NATO surroundings and favorizing this Russian and pro-Russian narrative in Serbia is actually suicidal.
Last summer, the Financial Times reported that Serbia had indirectly provided Ukraine with weapons worth €800 million. At the same time, it has refused to join any sanctions against Moscow and maintained friendly relations with the Kremlin.
Poland and Ukraine have exchanged lists of exhumation sites on their territories in a crucial step for a historical reconciliation. Ukrainian Deputy Minister for European Integration has confirmed Kyiv is ready to move forward with the works long demanded by Warsaw, especially when it comes to the site of the Second World War Volhynia massacre.
Poland has asked for exhumation works of Volhynia mass graves for decades, and now a breakthrough is on the horizon.
We have taken a very important first step. We have exchanged requests from the Polish side to carry out work on the territory of Ukraine, and the Polish side has received requests from us to carry out our work on the territory of Poland.
Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski warned late last year that Ukraine should treat the matter of proper burial of Polish victims seriously. But the main opposition candidate in the upcoming presidential election, Karol Nawrocki, went a step further earlier this week.
Today, I do not see Ukraine in any structure, neither in the European Union nor in NATO, until such important civilizational issues for Poles are resolved.
This has prompted a strong response from the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry.
We reject these biased and manipulative claims. Such statements indicate that the Polish politician prioritizes short-term political considerations over the strategic security interests of his own country. The fact that Mr. Nawrocki's statements were met with applause in the Kremlin is telling.
The candidate of the Polish ruling coalition, Rafał Trzaskowski, who currently leads the opinion polls, has also criticized Nawrocki for his words.
I was very surprised by the comments made by my opponent concerning Ukraine's NATO and EU memberships. These memberships are crucial for Poland's national interests.
Thousands of Poles had been brutally murdered in the land of Volhynia by Ukrainian nationalists during the Second World War. Poland has demanded for Kyiv to allow for exhumations for years, but despite several breakthroughs in the past, these have never materialized.
Turkish soldiers are building a bridge in southern Poland after the massive floods which swept through the country late last year. Polish and Turkish emergency services often help each other during natural disasters, and this time is no different. Our reporter Kazimierz Łysiak visited the construction site in the Krosnowice and has this report.
It's been almost 4 months since a massive flood swept through southwestern Poland, destroying entire houses and tearing down bridges, like right here in the village of Krosnowice. After more than 100 days, there are still places around Poland which need repairs, and this will tell you just how massive this natural disaster was. And while the Polish services have managed to repair most of the critical infrastructure, they still have some work to do. Luckily, they are not alone in this huge task, as Turkish soldiers came here to Poland to set up a temporary bridge. And I am joined here by one of the Turkish officers. Can you tell me how soon can you set up this bridge and how difficult it will be?
We started operations as we could. If weather and terrain conditions allow, we planning to set up 4 or 5 days.
All right, thank you so much, and I will let you get back to work. Earlier today, we've had here the Turkish ambassador to Poland, who came here to oversee the site, and he told me that this operation by the Turkish soldiers is a great way to repay the favor to Polish servicemen.
This is a tradition of solidarity between our nations, not only in natural disasters, but in harder circumstances for several hundred years now. It's a principle that we kept. The Polish rescue teams were there in February, earthquakes last 2 years ago in Turkey. They saved 11 lives. We are eternally grateful to them. But it's not only natural disasters. Every single trouble we have, respectively, we will be there to help each other out.
For the residents of Krosnowice, this crossing is crucial to their daily lives, so they are very happy to have the Turkish soldiers here.
The bridge joined together the factory side of the village with the local school, church and social center, so it is very important for us, as we now have to take a lengthy detour to get across.
According to the Polish minister in charge of the post-flood reconstruction, Marcin Kierwiński, the Polish government has so far spent more than 700 million euro for the repairs, and the Turkish soldiers are adding their small bit to it. As the old saying goes, a friend in need is a friend indeed. From Krosnowice, Kazimierz Łysiak, TVP World.
The suspect of killing a 3-member family in a traffic accident on a Polish highway may soon face the Polish justice system. Sebastian M., who allegedly caused the accident in September of 2023, fled to the United Arab Emirates shortly after. Polish investigators have been seeking his extradition for some time. Lately, the Court of Appeal in Dubai has confirmed the legal admissibility of the extradition.
This case concerns a tragic incident, as the prosecution very much wanted to act efficiently. Not only in this matter, we want to ensure that the perpetrator is held accountable. We succeed in convincing the Emirati side that this act constitutes an extraditable offense and can serve as the basis for Sebastian's extradition to Poland. Of course, this is not the final stage of the case, but as we said, we already have this positive outcome. This case shows how efficiently state authorities can cooperate. It is absolutely necessary to emphasize the excellent collaboration between the Polish prosecutor's office and the consular services operating on the territory of the United Arab Emirates.
For many, Central Eastern Europe is synonymous with harsh winters, akin to the images we think of when we envision Siberia. But in Poland, this year's winter made a delayed, if sudden, arrival. Zuzanna Jurek reports.
From the north to the south, across Poland, people were greeted by snowfall on Saturday morning, which delighted some.
I'm very pleased it's snowing. Winter is beautiful, and you should also carry this beauty within yourself.
Whilst sparking anxieties in others, particularly when it comes to driving safety.
I heard yesterday the snow caused an Armageddon. When I left my house this morning, I expected the situation to be a lot worse than it was, as the main roads were usable.
Poland is no stranger to harsh winters. In 2006, for example, record low temperatures of -30 degrees Celsius chilled the nation. But while this highly anticipated winter is being warmly welcomed by Poles, climate experts warn that white down may soon be a memory of the distant past.
Of course, the global warming is one of the issue. During the last few years, we do not have very strong winters. The mild weather during the winter still will stay.
And whilst climate change may affect winters to come, Poles everywhere are rejoicing at the sights of this year's delayed winter wonderland.
And with that, we end World News Tonight, but please do stay tuned here on TVP World, as we're back in just a moment with more news and features.